Our next guest caught 106 passes for 1,538 yards and 15 touchdowns, and that was just in 2008.
Yes, it was.
It was also the best season by a receiver in program history. During his 3 years on the field in Provo, he redefined the position, went on to play in the Super Bowl. It is our pleasure to welcome Austin Collie to the Wise Guys. Austin, you were just endorsed by Margin Hooks as an all-around great guy, so welcome to the show.
Well, Margin, back to Margin. Margin's a phenomenal guy. And I will say, Andrew Rich is going to have a hard act to follow after this 20 minutes, fellas.
Well, Margin said, first of all, tell Austin I said, hey. He said, I love Austin. And he goes, and tell Austin that this whole thing that I'm doing with training receivers and all that, he said, I came up with that idea because of Austin's dad. And so, Scott, your dad, my old teammate, Scott, who I love, Austin's family and my family go back a long, long ways. Scott and I played together, and he was one of my favorite teammates. And then he was married to Nikki, and we named our daughter Nicole after Nicole Collie, thinking that her nickname would be Nikki, but you can't give a nickname, and everybody started to call her Collie, and we're like, no, she's supposed to be Nikki, like Nikki Collie. But
nicknames just happen.
And then our kids are all intertwined. Like Austin's good friends with Kellen, and it's just our families go back a long way. I love the Collie family. They're one of the best families on earth, and we're really excited to have. I'm so glad Austin would come on with us because I have so much respect for his family. So.
That's the Cougar lineage right there at its finest, the Cougar heritage right there, man.
Yep, it sure is.
Austin, let's go to the Super Bowl in 2010. You had 6 catches for 66 yards, including a 40-yarder from Peyton Manning in a 31-17 defeat to New Orleans. What was it like to make that first catch in the Super Bowl, which is something that you had dreamed about from Pop Warner, and then you were there and you were making plays? What's that feeling like?
It's something, I'll tell you. It's definitely one of those things. I mean, that whole year I was having a hard time really taking a step back and comprehending what was going on, right? What situation I was in. I mean, I was catching passes from Peyton. I was, rubbing shoulders with guys like Reggie Wayne and Jeff Saturday, right? Dallas Clark, right? So the fact that I was there, and not only was I there, I was in the huddle, and I was catching passes throughout the season. I was already having a tough time kind of taking that all in, let alone going to the Super Bowl, right? And I think, Dennis Pitt always loves to give me, he loves to rouse me about the fact that he's a winner and I'm a loser, right? But
you know what? Dennis was on it with us a couple weeks ago, and I think he actually
may have said that.
He did say something about when you get Austin on, remind him that I did win the Super Bowl. That's what.
Yeah, he loves reminding me of that. And if you want to know what's so funny is we have a tradition for every Super Bowl, the Pit has come and stay with us to hang out for like a week, and we end up watching the Super Bowl together, right? As a family or as a couple families. And I'll tell you what, man, it has not gotten any easier. If anything, it's gotten harder to watch the Super Bowl for me, right? Because at that time, I didn't fully comprehend what it meant. I mean, obviously it's the Super Bowl, right? But when you lose, you lose and you go into the locker room and that's it. And I got to see the other side of things when you actually do win and what happens, because I was there for Dennis's and we got to hang out with him after and go to the after parties and stuff like that. And, every time I see the post-game production and all that jazz and then see some of these guys that have won it, a few years later, man, it is just always just a dagger to my heart, right? And that pain only gets worse with each Super Bowl, right?
Wow.
See, that's the competition in our guy
there.
right here. That's the competition. This is like, people ask about games, and the ones that you lose, you remember all the plays that you didn't make. Of course, we do remember the plays we did make in wins.
Right.
In
and
wins
sometimes
well,
those
right?
plays,
Right.
sometimes those plays get a little bigger.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it kills me. And a funny story about that is after the season finished up, we still got like an AFC championship ring, and they made it a little bit extra special because that year the NFL named, the Colts the most winningest organization in that decade. So they made it, and which I had nothing to do with, right? But they made the ring a little bit extra over the top, and they present it nice in your locker with this custom box with your name on it. And I remember opening it, and looking at it being like, oh my hell, like this thing's nice. Like this isn't a bull ring, right? Like this is it's probably the equivalent of any Super Bowl ring that had come before that. And I felt the hand come onto my shoulder and a voice say, if I ever see you wearing that, it'll be the last thing that you do. Right. And it was, sure enough, it was Peyton. Right. And of course he was saying that because, losers don't wear these rings. Right.
Yeah.
It's not a Super Bowl ring. You want to wear the Super Bowl ring. I don't want you seeing the second place ring. Right?
Wow.
That's good advice.
So, hey, you played with Max Hall, who's a great competitor, all-time winningest quarterback in BYU history. And since you were the receiver, you're probably the all-time winningest receiver in BYU history. Nobody ever talks about that. Played with Peyton Manning. You also played with Tom Brady, right? So,
yeah.
Whose personality was the toughest to deal with?
Off the field or on the field?
Either.
Yeah. You choose.
I don't know, man. Like I have always made an effort to make the quarterback my best friend. I found out early that was probably a smart business decision, right? Make sure you befriend the quarterback.
Absolutely.
And thankfully, all the guys that I've played with have we have found that kind of common ground as far as what we want to do, and that was to win ball games. And every single one of the quarterbacks I had unbelievable amount of work ethic, right, which I admired and which I try to kind of match. All three of those guys are very different and unique in their own way, but they're all some of the greatest competitors that I've played with, right? That were not afraid to put in the time and put in the reps, right, to continue to get better. And that's ultimately what they all wanted to do, is kind of see how, what their ceiling was, and weren't afraid to put the work in to do it, right?
So who of the three was the most competitive? We know Max, and he's got to be up there, but of those three, and two of those are elite NFL guys, and one's an elite BYU guy, who was the most competitive?
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody that's more competitive than Peyton is.
Really?
Yeah. Like he's he had every excuse, and Tom's up there as well, right? I'm a bit biased, right, because Peyton's my guy, but yeah. I thought I worked hard. I thought I prepared hard, right, when I was at BYU, and it was, it paled in comparison to what Peyton and the time that he would put in and the time that Tom would put in, right? Like it is night and day, nonstop, and really that's why. I felt like I hit a different level when I got to the league, and it was really all thanks to him, just because of the standard that he held for his teammates and the standard that he held for me, right? Like I remember the first day coming in, we had the first day of install, and I was already with the ones, right? That was the reason why they drafted me, was to fill the role of Brandon Stokely and to be the slot guy. So I was already with the ones, and I think we had installed like 15 plays that day, 15 new plays, right, with like 3 different formations. And you head out to the field as a rookie thinking to yourself like, oh, if I screw up, everyone's going to understand because I just learned these and had to learn them within like an hour and a half, right, of classroom work. No one's going to get mad at me. And I remember running the wrong route, and Peyton got after me, and I'm like, well, first off, it's nice to meet you, right? Second off, all right, man, like I'll get to it, right? Like, and from that point on, I knew what was expected, what was going to be expected of me. I mean, most of these guys in the huddle was the same group. It was the same group that won the Super Bowl in 2006, right? I think me and Pierre Garçon were the only missing, or the only pieces of the puzzle that were different.
Wow.
From an offensive standpoint. And so it was, it was kind of a high pressured situation. And, thankfully I had the support system around me to constantly be studying, right? Like I remember grabbing Brooke, my wife, and she got to know the playbook as well as, or as much as I did, just because she'd be constantly quizzing me in the family room, right? Going over every single play, just because I didn't want to be that guy, right? Since I was the only different part of that offense.
Sure.
Any decline in performance, obviously they'd be looking at me saying, yo, you need to get your act together, right? Because this isn't how we roll.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure.
Yeah. And we wonder how teams win championships. That's how they win championships.
Yeah, that kind of expectation, right? You got to expect to win. And expect everybody to put the work in to win, right?
Absolutely. Like I remember times on film, man, I would he would have put a ball maybe a little bit away from me, and it may have gotten my fingertip as I stretched for it, right? Typically, in a college environment, it's like, oh, that would have been a nice catch had you pulled that in. No, you get to his level, it's like you should have had that. If it's in your radius, man, if one hand or not, that's got to be pulled in, right? And that type of mentality, I kind of had to like switch my mindset real quick on what the standard was going to be. And naturally, that just gets you to a place that you've never been before.
Yeah, that's pretty. Were any with those three guys? Now take them off the field. Who was the most fun to just hang with? Who was the nicest of those three off the field?
Well, Max was my guy, right? Like Max, and Dennis and Harv, and that was a unique, very special and unique time. As I'm sure you can say, Blaine, right? I mean, the friendships that you develop there on the team and in high school, man, those are irreplaceable, right? And the time was so much fun, right? You had no worry in the world. You're living, stipend check to stipend check, and some of the stuff that we would go do would be always together, and had so much fun during those times. That's why it was really difficult for me to leave early and leave that behind.
Austin Collies on the Wise Guys tonight. 3,255 receiving yards in 3 seasons.
Yeah, you gave us one season of 1,538, which is just borderline ridiculous in college. But Austin, you appreciate we're talking about Max and what a good friend. We had Max on with us just a few weeks ago as well. I asked him to verify the story that when he was a sophomore, you guys were in a game where it just kind of went back and forth. Offense scored, defense gave a score up. Then offense scored, defense gave a score up. Offense scored, and he walked by Bronco and said, "Hey, do you think the defense might get a stop sometime tonight?" And Bronco told that story, and Bronco said he thought, he said, I started to step toward him like, well, you little, and then he thought,
yeah,
no, I actually think I like that out of my quarterback. And he backed off and didn't say anything to him. And he had no idea that what Max was going to turn into, but that was kind of the fire Max had on the field. Like, he just felt like, man, we're doing our part. How about the defense stepping it up? I asked Max, did that happen? He goes, I'm not going to confirm or deny, but that might have happened, is what he said. Can you see Max doing that on the field?
Oh, that type of stuff happened all the time. I'm not gonna lie. From an offensive standpoint, man, our confidence level was through the roof, right? Like, we felt we could play with anybody at any time, and we were putting up the numbers that kind of back that up, right? And we really had a very, very unique group where all we wanted to do was win. We were hungry to win. We put in the work to win. And, I'm sure Kellen could tell you stories back then that were like, those offensive guys, man, we would love nothing more than to just cold cock all of them. Right. But we definitely had a different level of swagger and moxie to us back then. So I don't doubt that Max said that.
Yeah. That sounds so much like Max.
There's a small number really of elite receivers, a small group of you guys, and Margin's right there, and you and let's talk about Puka Nacua. We're expecting to see him on the field Saturday night against Wyoming. He wants to go to the show where you've been. Does Puka have what it takes to get to the NFL?
I think so. I think he definitely has that explosive play capability, right? That BYU typically doesn't or hasn't had for quite a while. More, I think back to the past, 5 years, it's kind of been role playing type of efforts other than Dax, right? But then Dax was only kind of a 1 year type of deal, had an explosive year with Zach, right? But I like him a lot. I think, like I said, he's a phenomenal athlete. He's a big body, right? I think he's got the perfect metrics to go on to the next level. As far as route running, I haven't been able to, in order for me to kind of really evaluate a receiver, I got to see the tape, right? Yeah. And I can't see the television type stuff, right? I got to see the real tape, the aerial view, and I got to see the angles that they're taking and how well they're coming in and out of their breaks and what the separation looks like, which, the TV footage really doesn't capture. So, but from what I've seen just on TV, man, he's, I think he's a special talent, right? There's a reason why he went Pac-10 right out of high school and had a tremendous amount of offers. And I was surprised at how big he was.
Really?
Yeah,
Right?
the measurables, right, Austin? Like he's 6'2", he's like between 205 and 210. You know, he's got all the speed in the world. He's got a 40-plus inch vertical jump. So all of those things jump off the page. Those all add up to NFL. But it's way more than just that, right, to be able to make it at that level.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like, I would lie. I'd be lying to you if I didn't say some of it came down to luck, right? And the further down the draft board you go and the further rounds you go into, more of that luck needs to transpire, right? You're going to need more of that. From situational standpoint, you know, what offense you're in, what quarterback you're in, what you're able to do outside of the position, right? I think plays a huge part in it, especially if you go down to those lower rounds. So, you know, honestly, whatever you can do when you get to that level, you got to showcase, right? I think I remember the first 4 OTA practices we had. Like, I had never done punt. I was never on the punt return team other than being a punt returner, and they actually had me like out, you know,
out on the gunner.
No, not out on the gunner, but like you know, on the D line, but a wing, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
rushing the punt, right? And I remember in practice, it was a live practice, and I think I got like 3 in a practice, and I'd never done it before. And that's probably what helped me so much, is that I'm new position, never been taught, and I'm just kind of, you know, freelancing out there, just willy nilly. And was able to block 3 of them. And so sure enough, they put me on the punt block team, and that lasted for maybe 2 games, because I came back to our offense coordinator and said, you've got to pull me off of this, because every time we get the ball, we're going this lightning type of pace, right? We call it lightning package, where it's hurry up. It's like a 2-minute type of package that Peyton every once in a while would get into. So I would rush the punt and then have to go back down and cover and block, and then turn around when you go into that lightning 2-minute, right? And it absolutely killed me. Like, it totally affected my performance. But without a doubt, it helped show the other coaches, like, okay, this kid is capable of more than just catching balls, right? Like, this kid's a football player. We can put him in different spots if we need to. If it came down to it, maybe it didn't work out at the receiving end of it, you know, but as far as special teams and some other ways he can get involved into the offense or special teams, you know, at least gives us that option, at least gives them that option, right? You just prove your worth as a football player, right?
So what I'm hearing is that you were the precursor. Before Taysom Hill was Taysom Hill, there was Austin Collie, who was Austin Collie.
No.
That's what it sounds like.
No, not even a fraction. I don't think I've ever seen a better football player as a whole than Taysom. Taysom is probably one of the most premier football players I've ever seen.
He's a freak among freaks, isn't he? Like, that's, people don't understand, because the NFL is a collection of freaks, but he's a freak with the freaks, which is hard to be, right?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, to play those different positions, man, that's crazy, right? To play a variety of different positions all in one season, and to produce at those positions, right? Like, you're an all-around unbelievable, you know, football player, right?
People that big and strong aren't supposed to be that fast. They just don't make it like that. That combination doesn't happen.
Yeah.
No.
So,
hey, let's talk about a couple of moments that you had at BYU. You had so many, but the infamous 4th and 18 play that Max had talked about against the Utes in 2007. Harvey scores a few plays later. You guys win the game. But you're sitting there waiting for that ball to come to you, and you find yourself behind the Utah defense. Can you still picture the wait for Max to have delivered the ball? He said he had a hurt shoulder. He gave it all he had.
He was like, hey, he's lucky I got it out there.
And you had to wait for it.
Yeah, no. So I remember him signaling like a double move. It was like, I think, a stutter and go. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that is the dumbest call in the history of sports, right? Like, these guys shouldn't be biting on anything. They're going to sit at the sticks, right? Keep everything in front of them. So just by giving a double move, if this guy bites, that's going to be the worst error, right? That kid's probably made his entire career. And sure enough, he did bite, right? Which is crazy, right? Double move on 4th and 18.
And do you see him bite? Do you see him make that bite, and all of a sudden you're going, whoa?
Oh, yeah.
Are you thinking, what in the world? Like, what is he doing?
And I kind of gave that double move kind of a half-ass effort too, because I'm like, no way this is going down. right? No way this is happening. And sure enough, out of the corner of my eye, I see him driving on the ball. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I go, I get around him, and then, yeah, man, that ball was hanging up there for quite a while. So, but it was, at the time, you're just like, all right, another routine play, let's go, right? But you look back at that, and you're just like, man, that was a big moment. That was, a colossal error on whoever the corner was at that point, and we were just lucky to kind of get away with it.
Austin, Harvey told us, like, how when Harvey scored, he kind of ran over the dude, and then he looked back at him. Harvey's like, what? He goes, I'm going to give you the rest of the story. He goes, I don't know why I was so mad, but I turned around to throw the ball at him. And he says, but Sete he came and ran at me so fast, I ended up throwing the ball into Sete and it bounced off. He goes, nobody knows that Sete kept us from getting a 15-yard penalty.
Yeah.
He's like, see, the little story behind the story goes, I don't know why I was so angry and so on edge, but I was going to throw the ball at the guy that I just ran over.
Yeah, I would have killed Harvey if that happened.
Now, last spring at the alumni game, Brian Keel makes this Hail Mary catch. It's on BYU TV, and he goes right to our reporter on the field. And you know his quote. He says, when you're living right on and off the field, magic happens. And now there's no way he knew he was going to catch that ball. But he already knew what he was going to say if he was celebrating on such a thing.
Brian Keel has been imagining that moment, right? Even though he's a defender, he's been imagining that moment for quite some time. I can assure you that.
He said it was his greatest play in BYU history. I was like, what?
Yeah, that moment. There's been some nights where it's probably kept him up. Just imagining, the cold sweats, right? Just getting his heart rate up, going over that play several times, and the fact that it finally came true and that he was able to kind of have a little bit of a little piece of that offensive joy did my heart good.
We asked Max, who was on here with us a little while ago. We asked Max, we had Max list his 5 greatest plays at BYU, and we asked him if this one was one of them, and he goes, no, but I can tell you this, it was Brian Keel's greatest moment.
He said it didn't have anything to do with any of mine, but it was definitely Brian's. So didn't you join that? Did you join that crew, that whole crew down in SoCal on that golf trip a couple weeks ago? Didn't you?
Yep.
Did you go down? Keel went with you, and Kellen went with you. And who won that whole thing down there?
I think Keel has a tally. Keel's always the one keeping the tally, and he'll have that tally for time and all eternity. But he played pretty dang well. But yeah, it was me. It was Dennis. It was Bryce Mawika, Kellen, and BK, and Brian played exceptionally well.
He played well. That's
very well.
That's good.
You want who else played really well? I was shocked. I've never golfed with Kellen before, but he can swing him. Kellen can swing him.
He's so stinking busy with work that he never plays. I'm like, dude, you have a good swing. You could, like, if you played once in a while, you might be really good. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I got to tell you, so it's been fun for me. Your dad and I, when we were together, and now I know where you got he was always really good friends with Jimmy Mackin, because I realized that you learned to get to know the quarterback well from Scott, which is great. Your dad was unbelievable technician and had the softest hands of anybody I've ever thrown it to. I love throwing it to Scott. But it was a thrill for us. Like, so you and Zach and Dillon, the coolest thing for a dad is when we've run out of that tunnel and we've experienced that and been out on that field, to have you guys, and for him to have all three of you and I was always rooting for you and Zach and Dillon hey, I was just pumped for you guys the first time to run out of that tunnel.
Yeah.
Then I had Kellen and Landon and Gavin all get to do it. I don't know if any two dads that played together had 3 of their sons get to have that same experience, but that was really cool for your dad and I to have 3 boys all get to wear the blue and white. And what was that like for you to have 3 brothers, and for your dad as a family to have that? I know it was like for the Fowler family, but it had to be really cool for the Collie family.
Oh, it's way cool, right? As a dad, as me as a dad now, right? Like the fact that I would love to see my boys play D1 football. Right. I would, that would definitely be a dream come true. Right. Or any D1 college sport. Right. Cause the memories and the experiences that come along with it, right, that are irreplaceable. Right. It's not necessarily about playing the sport at that level, but it's about what comes with it, right? And I mean, I'm biased. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you, every day I wish I was still playing football, right? Everyone asks, do you miss it? I say, hell yeah, I do. And anybody who tells you they don't is lying to you, right? Yeah. Because it is, just some of the best times that you can have, right? And I only want that for my kids. And the fact that my dad got to see us all kind of partake in that same thing, and that, it gave us a platform to really relate to one another and tie some of those fatherly teachings back to football and back to those experiences. Like that's stuff that, like I said, not many people get to do and are irreplaceable.
It's pretty special. Hey, and the fact that you're just off with your boys, like with the guys, the fact that you're just down golfing with your buddies, that whole group that you just mentioned, all teammates getting together, it's a brotherhood that just goes on forever. You never lose that. And is it the same in the NFL, or is it just not quite the same as it is in college?
So it's funny you say that, because me and some of the Colts, some of the old Colts teammates, myself and Jeff Saturday and Peyton and Jacob Tammy and Anthony Gonzalez and Brandon Stokely, right? We're all on we all started for the first time. I think it's our first time ever playing fantasy football, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we all kind of have a league going. And again, when I first got to Indianapolis, the camaraderie within the locker room was off the charts, similar to BYU, right? And I want to say the values that existed within each one of those guys within that locker room was very similar to BYU, right? As close as you could get in the NFL, right? Like all God-fearing guys, family men, right? I mean, a lot of the guys already had, 4 kids, some of them in high school, right? But they understood the value of family, and they didn't, they knew what the real priorities were, right? And where football kind of fell in that, right? And going from BYU to that, I couldn't have asked for like a better transition, because I couldn't say the same thing about going to the 49ers when I was there, right? Like when I went to the 49ers and was in camp with the 49ers for that short little bit, complete opposite. It would be exactly as, what the public would assume the locker room is like, right? Which is very individualistic, right? Like all about me type of environment, right? Some of the players there were awesome that I totally got along with, but you could just tell it didn't have that same brotherhood as we had in the Colts, right? And, the fact that we all still keep in touch on a regular basis and are on texting threads and whatnot says everything.
And
right?
that's cool. And that's why it's a very special situation you had with the Colts, and it's no surprise that was the team of the decade. A lot because of that, I'm certain. Don't you think?
1,000%.
Absolutely.
That has everything to do with it.
Yeah.
Right.
So cool.
5 questions for the great Austin Collie.
Yes, these are the 5 quick. It'll be interesting how he matches up with Dennis and with Max and those guys. But
all right, you ready? 5 quick questions.
These are rapid fire. First thing that comes to your head.
Favorite sports movie?
Yeah, favorite movie.
Oof. Remember the Titans.
You know what? That's what Margin Hooks just said. So you go. That's
Must be a football
that's
thing.
mine too. Favorite singer or band?
Ooh, Drake.
Nice.
It's a first Drake.
I like Drake.
Drake,
that's our first Drake, but I like Drake.
Favorite
who did Max say?
Max said,
you guys remember?
I think he said some country. I have to go back and look because we took notes on it.
I thought it was somebody we hadn't heard of before.
Yeah, it's like a
but
country thing.
He's just gotten into
I got
country.
a new one called Jelly Roll
might have
that
been Dennis.
I never heard of Jelly Roll before. My nephew was with him. He's like this big fat guy. I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Then I listened to his song "Son of a Sinner." I'm like, I kind of like this dude. It's like country hip hop rap.
I think Dennis said he was getting into country and he dropped the name.
Dennis.
No, he is.
Hey, for all the fans out there. All the fans out there, Jelly Roll's my new, just give them a listen, see what you guys think. So, okay.
I would attach that Post Malone as well.
Yeah, I like Post Malone too. So, favorite breakfast cereal?
Cocoa Pebbles.
When anybody goes a non-sugar cereal, we give them crap. So Cocoa Pebbles is a good choice.
We had a Cocoa Pebbles
what did
last
Dennis?
week.
Dennis probably gave you some like 100% fiber.
I think he said O's.
He might have said O's, and then he said he doesn't eat cereal because he eats boxes at a time. If he
says if I start, I
cereal.
can't stop. So I do oatmeal and stuff. We're like, oh brother, right? So
yeah, no, listen, but Dennis is the most judgmental foodie. Okay, like you can't have one unhealthy thing around that guy without just getting the worst stare down.
That's
right?
awesome.
And then you're getting interrogated while you're putting stuff like that in your body, which I find ironic because I remember going to the training table on a regular basis with that guy and him finishing off everything else.
Of course. He's well, for the record, I had Frosted Flakes before I came here today. Okay, your favorite quarterback of all time. Doesn't even have to be somebody you played with, just favorite quarterback.
Peyton.
Peyton Manning. All right.
Good answer. That might get you on Peyton's place. Answers like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then, Austin, your favorite BYU memory. Let's finish with that.
Ooh. Favorite BYU memory? Probably
Yeah.
beating UCLA in the Rose Bowl. Or not in the Rose Bowl, but in the Vegas Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
With the Manu Maliuna's block?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a great game. Great game. First bowl game after that I'd ever been to, and had the opportunity to kind of pull in a lot of catches and be pretty active that game, and that was fun.
That was a fun one. And Ethan Monomaliu, I can't even say it right now. Ethan Monomaliu. There we go. Comes up with a block. That's one of the most memorable games in BYU history. That's a great one. Love it.
Austin, thank you for joining the show. We hope to have you back again.
You're the best, Austin.
And appreciate your stories.
And give Brooke and the whole gang some love from me and your whole family. We love the Collies.
I will. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, Austin.
Austin Collie, he stands alone at BYU with what he did in that single season.
Anybody asked for like the greatest receiver in BYU history? It's right there. It's not a question.